You are using product qualified leads for your SaaS business, you need to track these 8 metrics. If you do so, one of the best things you'll be able to do is track the bottlenecks in your SaaS business without pulling your hair out. So this will make your life a lot easier. But in case you don't know, we'll just start off with what the heck is a product qualified lead in case you don't know. So product qualified lead is a PQL. Same thing. Fancy definition over here is a product qualified lead is for people who use your product and experience core elements that are directly linked to them experiencing meaningful value. So the biggest difference between a product qualified lead and a marketing qualified lead is that last part, the experiencing meaningful value through the product. So this is often linked to behavior, customer experiencing an aha moment where they truly get the product and they understand how it could have an impact on their day-to-day lives. Once again, contrast this to a marketing qualified lead. Okay, where is that aha moment in marketing qualified lead? It just does not have that because marketing qualified leads are really more so based on a content-led approach where someone will most likely understand how the product could help them, but they don't experience that aha moment. So that aha moment is what makes product qualified leads so powerful, especially when it comes to close rates. But now let's actually dive into some of these metrics. One caveat, please do not track everything. It's really dumb to do that because if you do track everything, what gets measured often gets done. That's actually not from Gandhi, but I thought it was very inspirational. And so I want you to really take a step back and just focus on the customer lifecycle here. So in a product-led SaaS growth approach, there's really only 7 states in the customer lifecycle, which we'll dive into right over here. We have when they first come to your website, they're a visitor. Then when they sign up and say, hey, I want to sign up for the free trial, there's number 2. And then within the product, once they hit a certain criteria of getting to that aha moment, boom, product qualified lead. And then hopefully, if all things go well, they love the product, they can see how it can help them in the day-to-day, they become your customer. And then the last part is the active customer. And then from there, there's really only 2 paths that can happen for the active customer. They either renew and you retain them, or you upsell them, or they are churned. So that's very simple to understand the 7 stages of the customer lifecycle. And this chart by Apptrinsic does a really good job of just breaking this down and showing you, even just on the acquisition front, of where a lot of SaaS companies even have that recovery in the marketing approach and where they try and get those costs back that they might have invested in the actual acquisition of the visitors, the signups, and so on. And so, like I said, once again, there's the 7 customer states. So what metrics do you really need to track? Let's dive in. Number 1, visitor-to-signup rate. This one's really important because if you have a really awful visitor-to-signup rate, this is usually the easiest, quickest, dirtiest one to fix right away. How to calculate it's really easy because you're just going to divide the free trial of premium signups divided by visitors, and that'll give you that visitor to signup rate, which is magical. So one other thing I really want to emphasize here is track unique visitors, because if you don't, you're going to get your data that's going to be awful. So save yourself that pain. Then the Signup-to-PQL rate. So this one is really important because this basically shows you how good is your onboarding and how complex is your product. Are people really understanding how to use it? And I often find that when products have very complex products, their sign up to PQL rate is a little embarrassing. And so that's a huge red flag whenever I see a low rate here. One thing I'm not going to do is give you the averages of what you should typically see for the sign up to PQL rate, because like I mentioned, If you're comparing it to a very simple product that doesn't do that much to something that is very complex, you're going to get two completely different metrics that you should be following. So that's the second one. The third one is the PQL-to-Customer Rate. And this really just shows you, okay, when someone gets to an aha moment, is there enough draw for them to decide, like, is this for me? And should I go become a customer? And so often when you see a low percentage here, you might start asking questions here. Like if you're getting a lot of PQLs, like maybe it's a problem with your product qualified leads. Maybe you didn't define that correctly. And so you didn't pick the right aha moment. So your PQL is like people just going through the onboarding. Like, no, that is not what a product qualified lead is. And so you might have to look at what that definition is to see if you can change that percentage. And then also, like, what are the barriers for someone to upgrade? I've also seen SaaS products where it's almost impossible to find out where to upgrade. And it might only be through an email where you can actually upgrade the product. So pay attention to this one because this is where you make your money as a business. And so it's really, really important to optimize this one and make it as easy for people once they've identified that, hey, this is something that I want to do and I understand the value of the product, even asking them, like, why didn't you convert as a customer? And so you might find some very interesting stuff there. How to calculate it, as you can see below, just divide the PQLs by customers, and it's very straightforward for that one. And now for the sign up to customer rate. So the sign up to customer rate is really useful because you can definitely see like where are the gaps in the whole experience. And so if you find that your signups are just at like, let's say like a 1% conversion rate to customers, you are most likely having some problems, most likely in the onboarding or something else if you haven't been able to see them go to the customer rate. And so this might mean that you are just not attracting the right quality of signups. So I usually monitor this one just to really understand the acquisition side of it. And if you're talking or getting the right people to sign up in the first place. And now we have the customer churn rate. So 5 out of 8, more than halfway over. And so if we look at this one, this is a very like a staple SaaS metric that a lot of people follow. How to calculate it is basically just the churned customers divided by your total customers equals your churn rate. And the important note I've added here is just use the same time period, please. It's going to make it a lot easier. And now number 6 is the monthly recurring revenue, MRR churn rate. And so if we just look at this, we have the percentage of MRR lost in a specific time period. And so why you want to pay attention to this one is because if you do, you'll be able to have a much more accurate representation of the total MRR for the month and what is the net. Because if you don't track this, then I'm afraid your stats are a little bit bogus. And so how you calculate this is basically just divide the lost MRR divided by your current MRR and times by 100, and you'll get your MRR churn rate. One thing to note here is if you have a positive MRR churn rate, you want to always be trying to get to that magical negative churn rate, because unlike what we typically know in math, where we see positive, we think good, a positive churn rate is not really the best. Obviously, you want to aim towards to get the negative one when you first start off. It's definitely okay to have a positive one, but you always want to be, I guess, aspiring to get to that negative churn rate. So I hope the math here wasn't too bad for you. And now 7 out of 8. So MRR Expansion Rate. This one's always good because it shows you the upsells and cross-sells to existing customers. And all in all, this really goes into increasing the LTV or lifetime value of each customer. How you get it is just the expansion MRR divided by your starting MRR, and then you'll get that rate. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, this one is powerful because you can definitely see how your business is growing and becoming more and more profitable, because instead of investing more in the signups and visitors and getting that side of the funnel working, you are just expanding into accounts. And lastly, we have the net MRR churn. And so this one is really focusing on basically adding and subtracting the churned and expansion MRR for the same period so that we can get a good feel for if our business is actually making more money at the end of each month. And how you calculate the net MRR churn is just subtracting the expansion MRR from the churn to MRR and dividing by the MRR at the start of the period. And so that will get you that churn rate, which is very good. So let's do a quick recap. There are only 7 components of a customer lifecycle for product-led SaaS businesses. As you can see below, those are them. And it basically goes through every single area that someone is going to touch and go through as part of being a customer. And so in order to really go through and address all of these bottlenecks, you have to track these 8 metrics, and it's going to make your life so much easier once you start tracking these. And so if you still have questions, definitely let me know in the Facebook group for this course, and I am definitely happy to answer any of those questions. And have a good one. Bye.